We have people coming from far and wide. We have educators, family historians, or they could be doing genealogy. We have people who are coming to sometimes get to meet their loved ones for the first time. Or they could be history buffs, and they simply want to see some of the final resting places of some of the world's most famous people.
In the late 19th century, Jerome Bacon, administrator and instructor of the Institute of Colored Youth, along with John C. Asbury, a prominent African-American attorney in Philadelphia, Charles Jones, Martin Lehman, and Daniel Parvis got together and thought that this was the location that they would love to install a bucolic African-American cemetery. They were hoping that they could establish this at a time when cemeteries were segregated, or the African-American cemeteries of the city were being overrun by public works projects. It was a Quaker family, the Bartram family, who did sell the land to Eden Cemetery, in spite of the fact that many in the Collingdale area were not happy, and that there was racism and there was a reaction to that. Celestine Cromwell, her husband, was on the advisory board. She had passed away during the summer of 1902. And even though the negotiations were still ongoing for the borough of Collingdale to allow this site to be a cemetery, the founders felt a sense of urgency to want to bury her as soon as possible and also potentially become the first burial, which she did here at Eden. The town was fighting tooth and nail against that. And it took John C. Asbury's hard work and legal acumen to defeat those forces. It's another story of American institutionalized racism. Segregated cemeteries were often the only option, and finding the land for those was often difficult. Sometimes it was certainly behind African-American churches or in African-American communities or homesteads. Other times it was as part of burials in what were called strangers' burial grounds or potter's fields, places for those who did not have enough money, were orphans, could have been part of asylums, or they were the outcasts or the others in society that were buried, often with the funding of a local community or a city or state. So some of the initial interments were actually reinterments in the early 20th century, from Lebanon Cemetery in South Philly and Olive Cemetery in West Philly and Stephen Smith Cemetery in West Philadelphia as well. And you'll see those disinterments from their former cemeteries and reinterments out here become just as significant of the story as the interments in the early 20th century.
We're gathered now to lay to rest these individuals.
I mean, you can just hit on so many thematic groups here that the history is just incredible. There's Marian Anderson, and there's William Still, and there's John Baxter, who was the first African-American gold medalist in the Olympics in the early 1900s, and James Fortin, and T. Thomas Fortune, who was the right-hand man of Booker T. Washington, and Frances Ellen Watkins Harper and Jessie Fawcett, two incredible African-American novelists. The list goes on and on. This is one of the first memorials to World War I in the country, let alone one of the first African-American memorials. We're still doing that research.
The history and legacy of historic Eden will go on for many years to come.
Hey, hey, hey.
But we would like to have people come onto the cemetery grounds to do more than just lay a loved one to rest. We would like for them to come on and find out about all the wonderful things, the contributions that the people that are laid to rest here have made to the world.